you wanted to talk about Cloud Edition, you want to talk about multi-tenant. To start off, it's worth noting that multi-tenant is not a new concept, but is newly allowed. We've had people for years asking us if they can do multi-tenant, and we've never really had a great way to do it. And so Cloud Edition came out, and we realized that this could be finally the answer we were looking for to really make this feasible. You know, we talked about Ignition Cloud Edition as an enterprise solution for cloud computing that you can get from AWS or Azure cloud marketplaces. What's different about it from standard Ignition is that rather than buying your license up front and it being a perpetual license, it is a pay-as-you-go service, meaning that you just pay for your usage. And also you pay based on the size of the instance you're running. Now, before you're like, wait, inductive automation is changing everything to a subscription model? The answer to that is no. We have different editions, right? Ignition Edge and Standard Ignition are perpetual licensing. Currently, they don't even have a subscription option. But Cloud Edition is all a subscription model. And that's because you don't buy it directly from us, you buy it directly through the AWS or Azure marketplaces. It's a cloud native product, and so you're going to pay for it in a cloud native way. And so it just represents a different model. But what is multi-tenancy? Multi-tenancy is saying, I've got multiple customers. So say I'm an integrator and I want to provide irrigation solutions. We talked about irrigation, right? And I want to go and talk to different farming customers, you know, ranchers, whatever, and I want to sell them a solution about irrigation, but to sell them a full Ignition SCADA system might be cost prohibitive because they're not running a whole facility. They are just trying to do this purpose-built thing, right? This purposeful action. And so you could say, well, conceivably, you know, they're only going to have a few users and it's a pretty cookie cutter application. What if I just built something in Ignition that was a generic irrigation tool, and then I had multiple customers connect to their equipment, bring all that data into one Ignition server or one Ignition architecture, and then allow customers, you know, these different customers all to log into that same system and run their own equipment. It would certainly be cheaper, right? Because now each customer is not having to pay for their own Ignition server. I can just, as a service provider, buy one license, and then I can just make sure that I'm appropriately segregating my customers' data, and I'm managing the user access so they only have access to their data and all that kind of stuff. But how do I then charge my customers? Usually it's a subscription where they subscribe to the service and now they can log in and they could pay by user or by data usage or ports or however you want to do it, right? But you're able to provide a lower cost solution to these customers because your cost of Ignition is lower because you're doing this shared environment. And so for a long time, we've said, no, you can't do that with Ignition because you're buying a perpetual license and that's intended for a single user to use. And it was against our license agreement to do multi-tenant. But as we looked at Cloud Edition, we said Cloud Edition is already a subscription model where you pay by usage. And so now if an integrator or some other business wanted to create this application and to charge their customers based on usage, then we would also get paid based on usage. And as they add more customers, they may get a bigger instance of Cloud Edition, or they might scale out to multiple backend and front-end servers. And so it's a win-win, right? Where they can keep adding customers, but we can keep seeing revenue. It just makes sense for everybody. And so when we realized that, we said, all right, multi-tenant is fair game. So for Cloud Edition specifically, anybody could go and create an application and sell it however they want to their customers. And that also means now if you're an end user and you are interested in some purpose-built application, but you don't have the budget for a full SCADA system, you could look for one of these multi-tenant solutions out there to see if you could be able to get the benefits of Ignition, but at a lower cost. And so why do we do this? Well, we really believe that there's more innovation when our customers are able to do whatever they want with fewer restrictions. And like I said, people have been asking for multi-tenant for a long time. We haven't been able to support it well. And so we wanted to get rid of that limitation, right? And allow people who wanted to build multi-tenant applications to do so, to build custom hosted applications on top of Ignition. And Cloud Edition really represents the best place to do that because of the flexibility and accessibility in the cloud, and that usage-based pricing model. And so now a company such as an integrator can build an application in Ignition, sell it as a service to their customers, and can host multiple customers on the same Ignition server. And organizations with common challenges can search for multi-tenant applications that provide the functionality they need at a cheaper price, right? And so this will be especially helpful for certain industries or businesses with common challenges. I don't know that there'll be a lot of multi-tenant that'll be for highly specialized niche industries, right? It'll be more for generic industries that are trying to solve the same problems. We anticipate that the multi-tenant options will mostly be relatively cookie cutter because that allows them to scale the best. It won't be people saying, oh, well, I'm going to build you a full SCADA system, and now I'm going to build a new custom full SCADA system for another customer on the same gateway. That's not really what this is intended for. If it's a complete custom application, it should have its own dedicated server. Let's look at an example. Deep Fork Automation is an Ignition Gold certified integrator, and they work in the oil and gas space. And these are some screens from their oil wells that they help manage. And so they've built out a multi-tenant system inside Ignition where they can manage oil wells for multiple oil and gas customers. And so this is something where lots of their customers have the same types of equipment at these oil wells. They're looking for the same kind of metrics. They want to collect the same type of data. And so they've created this dynamic application in Ignition where it's based on customers and then based on areas and routes and wells. So then when a customer of theirs logs in, they only see their areas and they can go and see their wells and see all of their metrics, but they don't see anybody else's, right? And so they can keep adding customers that have other oil wells and add them to the same Ignition server. And when they hit a certain point, right, where that exceeds the load that a single server can handle, they can spin up additional instances. And so, you can see within their application here, going into details on the metering, they can also go and pull up, pop-ups as they go through and look at all these different meter paths and everything and see the, last state responsive and all that kind of stuff, right? See the flow rate, see the volume yesterday and today. And so, this was a good application that solved a real need that customers had, but that they could do it in kind of a cookie cutter way so that it was easy to service multiple customers from the same type of project. Really wanted to, just shout out Deep Fork for giving us permission to share their screens. Great company, and we're really excited about what they're doing with Ignition. And so we talked about both multi-tenant applications, leveraging Cloud Edition, as well as the new Ignition Edge. What do these two products have to do with each other? Why are we talking about them in the same webinar? Well, combining the power of Ignition Edge with Cloud Edition multi-tenant functionality lets you build scalable solutions with unlimited tags and connections from the edge connected up to a centralized cloud system for wider data access. What I really mean by that is you could picture if I've got here in kind of the pink area, I've got a full Ignition server. It's a redundant pair with a centralized database. And if I said, all right, I'm going to manage a bunch of customer sites, well, this blue area here represents a customer site that has individual PLCs. And those individual PLCs, let's say they're Allen Bradley. So now from Cloud Edition, I'm supposed to connect to these PLCs. How? Do I need to set up some VPN tunnel from the cloud directly to these PLCs to pull? Also, because if I try to just expose my PLCs to the internet, they don't support encryption or even authentication most of the time. And so it's a huge security vulnerability to expose your PLCs in such a way that the cloud can easily connect. Because we don't want people doing that, Cloud Edition doesn't even come with direct device drivers. We don't want people that are trying to pull from the cloud directly to PLCs, especially to multiple customer sites. And so how do you get around that? Well, you can see in the green box there, we have Ignition Edge. And if I had Ignition Edge there, I could be pulling the PLCs locally and then just publishing the data up to the cloud. And now I could do that over our gateway network or MQTT, both which support encryption, support user authentication, and all the modern security practices, right? And so really, if you're trying to do multi-tenant, having some local presence really helps make it a more robust solution. And so you could picture, I've got an Ignition Edge gateway at each of my oil wells, right? That's collecting the data, publishing it to a centralized system. And now multi-tenant makes more sense. And so really we see these two solutions being very relevant together. Now, does that mean that you'll always have to have Ignition Edge? Not necessarily. It could be that the data is being published up in some other way. Or there's some other tool that's publishing the data out from customer sites, and then Cloud Edition is able to access that, but it just won't be direct PLC polling from an Ignition Cloud Edition gateway.